Welcome to Unraveling the Secrets, where we explore the connecting links between the pernicious deeds of a group of secret society outlaws who are creating a tightly controlled world society with them as bosses and you and I as slaves to their system, popularly known as the New World Order. Research indicates that most of the unexplained craft we see in our skies are from somewhere on or inside our planet. This led to research of the Hollow Earth and subterranean theories in the 1980s and 90s, which in turn led to the realization that the answers we seek are in the control of a number of elitist groups and secret societies that we call collectively the Controllers. Even a quick look at recent world events should convince anyone that the Controllers' plan is working very well. It is these things we explore on this radio show. Join us as we work towards unraveling the secrets.
Have you always felt different? Are you concerned about the earth changes going on all around us and increasing on a daily basis? Earthquakes, floods, wildfires, superstorms, global warming. Do you feel a longing for a place you have always secretly dreamed about, but which doesn't seem to exist in our chaotic world? Do you have a past life, memories and dreams, or perhaps missing time, and maybe even wonder if you have been contacted or influenced by beings from a higher realm? Do you find yourself gazing up at the stars and feeling a longing so intense as to be heartbreaking? Well, join us tonight. This is Ladies' Night Out on the Unraveling the Secrets, and I am your co-host, Timothy Beckley. And over the great Hudson River, we have Carla Anderson, who is she's very balanced today instead of being unbalanced. Yes. And she apologizes for her discretions from previous shows. And of course, down in Miami, where the sun always shines, there's always all kinds of activities and a million places to eat and dance and watch the pretty girls. Is Angel, otherwise known as the Jackal.
Howdy. How's everybody doing tonight?
Well,
all right.
I could tell you my experiences at the doctor this week, but I have more important things.
I heard part of that experience. I don't think the audience wants to hear it.
They, if you're not half dead already, they'll kill you.
Completely,
that's for darn
Let's spare the audience, Mr. UFO. Let's spare the audience.
We could do a whole show on that some other time. Anyway, our first guest tonight, all the way out there in St. Ansgar, Iowa, is my old bud, Diane Tessman. Now, Diane Tessman and I go way back.
Way back.
Way back. I mean, like
babies and pacifiers, way back, like babies, pacifiers?
Probably before we were even born.
Whoa, that is way back.
But I met Diane when she was living in Florida, and she moved around the world swiftly. She was in Ireland. She lived in Joshua Tree, California for a while, right near the famous Death Valley and Giant Rock, where George Van Tassel built his rejuvenation machine, the Integratron. And today she's living in Iowa. She's back where she was born and raised on the same in the same rural area that she had her first UFO experience. I guess maybe abduction experience we should call it.
Yeah, encounter. I prefer encounter, but yes, abduction.
Okay. Right. All right. Well, let's go back, Diane. Let's start when we first met. You were in Florida at the time. And I think you had written me a letter, something about some weird experiences that were taking place in your house that were tied in with a disaster that took place down there.
Well, yeah, it turned out they were tied in with the Skyway Bridge. The barge hit one span of the Skyway between St. Petersburg and Bradenton, Florida. And I had a whole series of weird paranormal type of things for about a year before that happened. And it sort of worked in with the Mothman. In fact, I saw Mothman go over. It worked in with the Silver Bridge disaster that John Keel wrote about. And I wrote to you. I was teaching school.
That's
correct. I was a respectable school teacher.
Until you met me.
When I met you.
Yeah.
And, I had beeps in the house and several UFO sightings, so it might not have been entirely paranormal. It was also UFO, and of course, maybe there's a connection there, and maybe there isn't.
Well, but, what kind of UFO sightings did you have?
Well, strangely enough, my daughter, who was about 9 at the time, keeps talking about a UFO that was revolving and fairly low that we watched from our yard. Uh-huh. And our house was about a block from where we could see the Skyway Bridge. So we were actually quite close to where it finally got crashed into. But these things happened before the accident. And I do not remember that at all. And she says, yes, I was right there, and it was a revolving type, a spinning type of UFO, a saucer. But then we did watch two large orbs, white orbs, that had almost a translucent quality over Tampa Bay from the park that was overlooking the Skyway Bridge. And we watched them we watched one of them for hours. I was looking at one and kind of trying to communicate with it, and it disappeared all of a sudden. What did you say, Carla?
How big was it, Diane?
These were large orbs. I would say maybe the size of Earth from the moon, and those large, like a planet might be in a science fiction.
Okay.
And not huge, but a good size. Like the moon when it's full.
When you looked up, it looked like the size of the moon?
Yeah, but they were much lower. But they were.
Do you think like the size of a football field or like a stadium?
No, well, I don't. I have no idea.
Like the moon was round, and then that was round. Like it looked like the
same
size.
Yes, and their height was not that high, so they must. So they weren't necessarily.
Yeah, but
that's huge.
If you looked one to the other, yeah.
And they weren't weather balloons. They never moved at all, but one blinked out. I was trying telepathic communication, and it got rude and just blinked out when but the one stayed for hours. And finally, I had to teach school in the morning. I finally gave up and went home, and I had taken my daughter home a couple hours before that, my daughter and the dog. But she doesn't remember that at all. So I don't remember one thing, and she doesn't remember the other. And that all happened within a year or so of the Skyway disaster.
Well, that seems to be a frequent occurrence with people not remembering incidents. Now, I know that I went to the town of Pine Bush, New York, several times. Right? Mm-hmm. I know I went with Ellen Crystal and Harry Levelson. Harry worked for Omni magazine before he decided he didn't want to live in New York anymore and moved to Miami. In fact, whenever I talk about synchronicities and all of that, whenever he did not have a phone, he didn't want anybody to bother him. But whenever I went down to Miami, and this was on like maybe once or twice a year, I would always run into Harry on the first day, standing in front of Burger King or the post office. He had a post office box there. But anyway, Ellen Crystal had all these signs up in Pine Bush and all. And I guess I went there a couple of times because my name is etched on the bathroom wall in the barber shop.
We don't know what that's about, yeah.
Yeah, well, I know that sounds peculiar, but the guy who runs the barber shop, it's kind of like Balance, Carla. He has UFO photos around the place. And I guess every UFO researcher who came in, he put their name on the plaque, and the best we could do is have it hanging on the bathroom wall in his barbershop. I think he's still there because I saw him on the barbershop on the internet. Mm-hmm. But supposedly I went up to, I don't remember being in his barbershop, to be honest, but that doesn't really mean anything. Supposedly I ran into somebody a couple of years ago. They said, oh, we went to Pine Bush with you, and you started channeling the beings that were in these lights that were coming, overhead or something. And I said to this person, well, I knew they're not the type of person to lie, but I think I would remember that. That was not during my alcohol period. So I don't, I just don't remember it. It could have happened, but I don't remember channeling Ashtar, or at least on that occasion, I've put it out of my mind. But now, the experiences that you had in your house, wasn't this the fire alarm was going off and your toaster was popping up or something?
Yeah, it wasn't the toaster that I remember, but the fire alarm. Okay, we finally came to the morning when the bridge disaster happened. Not that we knew it was going to. And I was getting ready to go to school. It was 7:35 in the morning, and the smoke alarm started almost a Morse code type of thing. And I thought, oh, the batteries couldn't be low. I just put them in, and it wasn't an alarm. And we soon heard of a disaster when we had the news on. It happened at 7:35 is when an entire Greyhound bus went off that span. There were over 30 people killed. It was way back in the late 70s, so not too many people remember, and several cars. And it was exactly at the time that the smoke alarm, but nobody knew Morse code in my house. My parents and me didn't know, and Gianna doesn't know it either, my daughter. But I had been having beeps in the house, just like the wall would beep and the lamp would beep. And I even took a cassette tape recorder on batteries way out, like to the edge of the yard, and it beeped at me. So I had a case of the beeps for about a year, culminated by the Morse code on the smoke alarm. And it was exactly the moment that happened, and we lived very close to it, actually.
When you said you saw the Mothman go over it, what was that like? Describe that.
When I saw what?
Did you say you saw the Mothman?
Oh, the Mothman. Yes, I did. This was, again, getting up toward the time that the bridge thing happened. I was out, looking for UFOs and all. I was a field investigator. Actually, I was the state section director for MUFON for a fairly brief time.
That makes you very important.
Yeah, right. Don't ask me about MUFON. Anyway, I was always looking, and something covered the sky just in an opaque black. That was just swishing over, and it was outlined in sort of a blood red, a dark red, and it was too big to have been a bird. I mean, there are, water birds in Florida, but I don't know. It was like a guy with a cape that whooshed over. It was fairly low, and it was fairly large, maybe the size of a Piper airplane, but no noise, a Piper Cub, but no noise. And so I call it Mothman. I didn't meet him, but something went over that was kind of very strange.
Well, I know, Diane, you and I had a kind of a mystifying experience. We were having brunch. Was it in La Jolla or San Diego? I don't remember exactly. We looked out over the veranda, over the ocean, and here came this, I don't know, what would you call a drone or something like that, but decades before there was a
decades.
A drone.
Yes, unfortunately.
Yeah, decades, yes, I don't know. But that was our one sighting together, yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah, but it is a phenomenon. I kind of looked into it with various people that sometimes they remember a little bit, but the person they were with remembers quite a sighting. Yes. And then vice versa. I had that happen with a friend, too, out in California along Black Mountain Road before it was all built up. I saw a big light with string of pearls, like shuttlecraft or something around it. And my friend, who was all into this kind of thing, barely remembers it. So there's another one. And I thought maybe it was a refueling for Miramar Air or Navy base, but it doesn't line up with what that looks like. I've looked into that. So.
Well, I guess that is kind of a heavy area as far as the military traffic goes.
It is.
Also, as far as UFO traffic went, that's you live probably within 10 miles of Giant Rock Airport.
I did it in Joshua Tree. This was back in Poway. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
The Joshua Tree area had a sighting again with the same friend and her friend and my daughter out in the desert. I wrote about that in your Mojave book.
Oh, yes. Uh-huh.
The haunted Mojave.
Yes. Yes. Well, that place has been a gold mine of UFO sightings since the late 1940s. In fact, I was on the History Channel a couple of weeks ago, and there was an episode. It's called "The Mysteries in the National Parks," and they filmed in Joshua Tree. Even though I was in Toronto, I never got to Joshua Tree, but I have been there, of course. And they had quite a number of people. They had George Van Tassel's grandson, and they had his son-in-law, Daniel Boone, who always told the story about how one night he had to go use the outhouse because they had no plumbing or anything there, and he went out without his coveralls on because he knew he wouldn't run into anything. And lo and behold, he runs into a landed flying saucer, and he's very embarrassed when they ask him to come aboard. But they said basically that didn't matter. They were used to a little nudity, and so I guess he climbed on board, without his with no clothes on, which is certainly. It's not the first experience like that, because I remember on the planet Lanulos, Woody Derenberger claimed that they had like nudity. What do you call it? A nudist. It was a nudist planet. I mean, nobody got dressed up unless they were coming to Earth, I suppose. Then you gotta put on your fineries.
I wrote this big, deep article the other day for UFO Casebook on the possibility of future humans being some of the UFO occupants. And it was like a really deep article. I worked on this. It's one of my pet ideas for a long time. And the only response I got was some guy said, well, were they naked or did they have clothes on? I could have just strangled him, but luckily he wasn't anything. He was online.
1 million years in the future, and we've lost our underwear. How about that? Talk about advancements, right? Okay, well let's get back to the serious events here. You had some strange markings. I remember you showing me. How did that all come about?
Well, the strangest thing, I don't think I had fully understood back in our heyday, Tim. I knew I had a scar on the front side of my face between my nose and my lip, just in the line of symmetry.
I remember that. Yes, of course.
Yeah, and you saw that. Well, I thought that was a scar. And a couple of years ago, I got to realizing the membrane that is inside that same area is gone on me, just gone. I checked with my daughter, and I know most people have it. It's just that skin that kind of connects your lip to above your front teeth. Does everybody have it? Well, anyway, I don't.
I'm checking right now. I don't know. I mean, how did you find out you didn't have it? Put it that way.
Well, I know you don't know what you don't have. I mean, I figured out that there's
how did you find out you didn't have it?
Well, there's kind of bumpy scar tissue on the inside, and it's just simply, I checked other people then, my daughter and a friend, and I realized it is a little membrane there, or a fair-sized membrane, actually, as membranes go. Anyway, it's removed right up to under my nose. There's nothing except some bumpy skin. I asked my parents about the scar. Hadn't quite, both my parents are dead, and I hadn't quite discovered this actual membrane thing. It took me years to figure it out. But I said, did I have any kind of a little birth defect that was fixed, or did they take me to the doctor, the dentist, and they both said no, and they were very doting parents, and my mother would have been happy to say yes because she didn't like my UFO interest, and but they both said no, and so anyway, I have, there might be a reasonable explanation to it, but there really isn't. So I guess you could. Mouth tissue is supposed to be some of the best to clone, so there might be some more of me. But that's just, that sounds crazy.
That wouldn't be a bad thing.
Thank you, Tim.
Well, hey, so Diane, you eventually ended up in the University of Wyoming with Dr. Sprinkle. Now, did you go there because of the scar, or had you had a memory of being abducted or examined or something?
Well, I went because I was so fascinated with UFOs, was a field investigator, tried to be very objective, but I knew that there was a personal reason behind that, and I didn't know what it was. I suspected something because you read about abductees and whatnot. And so that was just the general wanting to know the truth, trying to delve back into it, and Dr. Sprinkle is still a good friend. He wasn't a friend at the time. It was an objective. He gave me psychological tests, and I did quite well on them. I seem not to be crazy, and in fact, I'm a person that handles reality all the time. I mean, I'm very functional. So anyway, when he regressed me, it came very clearly and fairly quickly that I had been taken aboard. The details are in The Transformation, the book that you published, Tim.
Oh yes.
And
a few years back.
Few years ago, but all of Dr. Sprinkle's notes are there about what I said. Lots of detail.
That's an excellent book that's gone through quite a number of editions, and it's available now on Amazon from you. I mean, I guess you're
Amazon and Kindle, and I also have copies myself. If anybody wanted a favor.
It won't ruin the book for me if you tell me what happened, though, because I like books anyway. So what happened?
Well, there was one. I saw beings around that were small humans, almost like dwarf humans, and not the classic ETs with the goggle eyes, but then also sort of insect-like beings. But I felt no fear, and I've looked into the fact other people feel that perhaps they can control fear in us if they want to. It seems some people are so traumatized by abductions, but
I'm scared of bugs anyway, though. I would just be freaked out by a giant insect. So,
yeah, well, I was 4 years old, and so I was a very competent 4-year-old. I was, smart and really had it together for 4.
I was actually more open to nature when I was 4, though. I developed a fear for bugs. Otherwise. Who knows?
Yeah, I was very open to nature and very shy and quiet, and maybe I was strange from the beginning, but I was 4, and there was this one being, a man who was sort of my guide, and he had amber eyes. He was not human. You don't see a human with the coloring or quite the facial features he had. But I could appreciate, that he was nice enough looking. He wasn't so strange. Of course, if they are advanced energy beings, maybe that was a conventionalization for my benefit. But he had tawny colored hair, kind of. It was a very golden feeling because his skin was fairly dark, olive colored, amber eyes that were almost translucent, and very almost reticent to talk to me. We sat on a bench at quite a distance from each other. People have asked me, especially these days, or do you think it was some memory of being molested? And no, absolutely not. That isn't, I never had that in my background at all, and this was nothing like that. It was something that turned out to be so influential and beautiful in my life, and eye-opening and vistas that I never would have known otherwise. And I'm so tender-hearted toward animals, and frankly, my level of consciousness is where I'm proud of it. I know I can go further, and that humanity has to raise its consciousness too. And I'm a human. I don't pretend to, that I just landed from Venus. But it's been such an influence in my life that I had 2 encounters that I remember. The other one was in a cabin in Canada. We were up there on vacation, and I've never gone into details on that in hypnosis, but I know that the same being walked in the door of the cabin. I was in the cabin by myself.
How old were you then?
4, because it was the same year in I hate to date myself, 1952.
Okay.
And there were UFO sightings locally that same year, I have found out recently. So I don't know, it's all a big puzzle that I've been putting together slowly for years. And actually since Tim and I knew each other, well, we still know each other so well, but since our heyday, I've put a lot of more of the puzzle together, actually. I've kind of gone inward and figured it out through research and articles that I've written, and I don't know, it just kind of keeps, it all makes sense. I mean, there's like a plan it's not a random or crazy thing. It's, there's clues, I don't know what it's all about, really, and yet it's something about human consciousness. I really think it's more about our perception and evolution than it is about any one race of ETs or time travelers, or it's something intended for us humans to help us.
Future humans.
When you met this individual, who you have identified in your books and newsletters as Tybus, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Correct. Pardon me, I'm taking a drink of water.
Yeah. Well, you're not allowed to do that. You're only allowed to snore.
Oh, shoot.
Hey. Okay. So now, did he speak to you verbally, like we're having a conversation, or was it telepathic? Because in a lot of these contact experiences, people say that it's it was a mind-to-mind thing.
I suspect it was telepathic, but hey, I was 4. I don't know. No, I don't.
Yes.
I don't think it was verbal. I think it was telepathic, and I can't tell you the details of what he said. I don't have the. I think that they show up in my channeling throughout because I have channeled him now for over 30 years. Tim, you helped me start the Star Network Heartline. Started in 1983.
That is true, yeah. In San Diego, right?
San Diego on an old garage sale typewriter.
Oh my goodness,
yeah. And then the Change Times Quarterly newsletter started in 1990 in Amsterdam when I had run away to Europe. And I probably channeled enough paper to reach the moon. I've written an awful lot, and I've never really come to huge prominence because I tend to be kind of stubborn and then I don't really have a huge amount of money for glossy stuff and to launch myself as some big personality, but I have kind of kept it the way I'm comfortable with it, which is just plugging along. And I've met so many wonderful, I call them star people, friends that have been, one lady's been with me since the first issue of the Heartline, May 1983. She's now 90 years old, and she was 60, I guess, when she started.
And you, so you moved to Holland, the Netherlands. Did you have any experiences while you were there?
No, but I was very troubled with things like getting my stuff out of customs, and then the government decided we couldn't stay there when they had said we could, and I was just kind of besieged with practical problems. So I went to Ireland after 6 months in Amsterdam, and there Mother Ireland talked to me, and I had messages from the Tuatha De Danann that were the ancient people there. Recently, some other people have been mentioning the Tuatha De Danann, I noticed. It looks like Tuatha De Danann, if you're not ringing, but it's pronounced.
How did you receive these messages?
Channeling, and they just land in my head. I've never had a voice in my head. Mm-hmm. It's just they identified themselves as that, and I've tried to get away from the channeling a little and write these science speculation articles because, but I still hold on to the channeling too with my newsletters. But I really believe that on up the road of our evolution, spirit and science need to come together, because we tend to say, the scientists will say, well, that's a rainbow. It's water going in a prism, through a raindrop when the sun shines. And then the spiritual people say, no, it's a symbol of hope. And maybe that rainbow really changed their lives, did give them hope. So it has concrete consequences. Spirit counts. I mean, scientists tend to just discount anything spiritual. Mm-hmm. But you can't really count out science either. So it shouldn't be in contradiction. And I think, we've got that bridge in our brain that isn't fully activated. I should know its name, but I've forgotten. But I think maybe when we evolve, maybe we'll be fully activated and we won't contradict. There's no need for contradicting each other all the time with science, religion, spirit. We just need to see things in a larger way. more than the sum of the parts. The whole is more than the sum of those parts, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
Well, I remember, I remember, Diane, when you were living in the countryside there in Kilkenny, that you used to send me photographs, beautiful photographs. But also, too, weren't you studying the Celtic shamanism? I mean, I remember seeing all these, what would you call them, markers or tombs?
Holy standing stones, holy wells.
That's right. Yes, that's right. Standing stones.
That dated back to pagan days, but the church took them over, and now they're church holy wells. And many churches, especially in Ireland, were built on old pagan sites. And in Ireland, I kind of embrace being a proud pagan. I think nature is God, and Mother Ireland, man, what a part of the female God. She just, especially in the 90s, I don't know if it's gotten a little more security-minded or something, but in the 90s you could go go up old stairways that led nowhere and crumbling old castles, and nobody stopped you. And they probably now have tightened up for fear of lawsuits, but you could lay down on a dome. I had a visitor who laid down on a dome and thinking he would get great psychic input, and he got such a headache that he had to go back home to the States early. He really, apparently you shouldn't take a nap on the top of a dolmen.
But you don't have to go to Ireland to find a dolmen. In fact, I must have told you the story. In fact, I was with your daughter. We went to, I think, Lake Superior on just a little outing one weekend. And it was raining out, so they had a tour. The park ranger would come to the hotel and take people on a walking tour, along the trails and stuff. But it was raining out, and frankly, nobody wanted to go. I don't think it mattered whether it was raining or not. So I stopped to talk to the nice lady who was the park ranger, and there had been reports, of course, of UFOs over Lake Superior and all. And I asked her, I said, "Has there been any recent reports of UFOs? Do you know anything about it?" She said, "Oh, that's not my particular, area of expertise, but come back to the ranger, headquarters with me, introduce you to Ranger Dan or Rick or whatever his name was." And we went back there, and I asked him, I said I had heard, I think she told me that there had been a UFO crash or something way back out, through the wooded area, because there's a lot of campers and stuff there, too. And he said, "Oh, maybe that was a meteorite." He said, "But, I had this couple that came by here, and they wanted to go canoeing, and they had to go back about 1.5 miles in the woods carrying their canoe, and they stopped under one of these chambers with the dome and the top and all." And he said for 2 nights in a row they had UFO sightings. This ball of light or whatever it was would come right over the top of the chamber, and finally I guess they decided that maybe they would do their canoeing or hiking somewhere else. But he said there had been other reports and stuff there. Now, I guess the Vikings, aren't they usually thought of as being... But we don't know that's the case either, because some of these places have writing on it, and nobody knows who wrote them, and it's all a mystery.
Well, yeah, I've heard the Celts also made it into the St. Lawrence waterway and into the Great Lakes. And my second sighting was on a Canadian lake, and those are I have a friend who still goes out to see the orbs over the lake, and she's a very objective observer, but there's all sorts of activity over Canadian lakes. My second encounter was by Eagle Lake, which is in Ontario. Really, the only time I
remember you telling me that. Well, go ahead, tell us that.
Yeah, there isn't. I don't have details of much of it, but we went up there for my cousin's 4th birthday, and we were the same age, so I know I was 4. And my parents, we rented a cabin. It had just a hole for a toilet that horrified me. I'd never seen such a thing. It was in the cabin, but just a deep hole, and a very primitive cabin. And usually my mother wouldn't have left me alone, I don't think. And we were just there for 1 day and 1 night, I guess. But I remember this was in the daytime. But for some reason, my parents were apparently out talking with my uncle and his wife, who also, they were the parents of the kid that had the birthday. And we met up there, the two families. And so I was alone in the cabin, and this being that I had encountered came in the door with dark glasses on, a red checkered shirt, and blue jeans. And strangely enough, I have talked to 3 other people over the years that suspected future humans who were who they met, who said they had on, or one of them had on, a red checkered shirt and blue jeans. So it's kind of like the computer on the starship must say, oh, you're going to 20th century Earth or 21st century, you need a red checkered shirt and blue jeans. He had on dark glasses, which he put up over his head when he came in, and he says, Diane, do you remember me? And I said, yes. And he said, are you afraid? And I said, no. And I was holding my little golden book. I don't know if Tim's old enough to. Did you have any little golden books that?
Oh yeah, surely.
Yeah, they were in a series, and my favorite was Toys in the Attic.
I read them. I read them now, even to this day.
You're still reading them.
I'm publishing them, actually. That's it.
My favorite one was Toys in the Attic, which is about not being afraid of the unknown, which is rather coincidental. So I was holding my little golden book, and that's all I remember of that. But the strange thing is, my little golden, so, that could be, I have no other recollection of what happened. But my little golden book from thereafter had a strange substance on it, and I wish I had kept that book now. I had it until I was about 20, and then, a black helicopter's coming. It's just a helicopter going over. And then it was lost. We moved to the Virgin Islands for my first teaching job, and our shipment got lost, part of our shipment, and that book would have been in there. But anyway, back to 4 years old, it had a strange substance on it that my mother said, well, how did you get lard on your book? She decided it was lard. She hated lard. She was very health-minded. We didn't have lard in the cabin. She didn't, and it went through every page of the book.
Yes.
It was almost like the book got slime from Ghostbusters, but it wasn't slimy. It was a softer. And so I don't know if that has any bearing on anything. But the kicker of this is, 30 years later, Aunt Marge, the kid's mother, called my mother. She divorced her husband, and we hadn't heard from Marge for years, but she wanted to talk to my mother just to say Merry Christmas. She asked, how was Diane? And my mother says, oh, she's investigating UFOs. And Marge says, well, Bill and I saw 2 UFOs when we were in a canoe on Eagle Lake that time. She had never said that. That was not a suggestion that we had never heard that before. So it was kind of confirmed, at least, that there was UFO activity.
Now, how old you weren't 4 years old when this one happened, though, right?
I was 4 both times. As far as the main one that Leo helped me remember, I have no way of knowing. I figured out I was 4 or 5. But this one, I know I was 4 because I was the same age as my cousin, and he had his birthday up there. So.
Now, has Tybus ever told you why he picked you to be his, I was going to say friend, or however you would
however to call that. No, I have a theory on it, of course. I have a half-brother who's 10 years older. So when I was 4, he was 14. He was having a lot of mental or puberty problems. He was just a very unhappy kid, very smart, but he had nightmares of 3 little guys he named Mo, Ho, and Po in the same year.
Very, very creative.
Very creative of it. And he was so dangerous that in the daytime, he was so scared of these guys. It was a recurring nightmare that my mother said, don't go in Norman's room. He's got a baseball bat and a knife. And we were actually afraid of him for a while, but he was scared of Mo, Ho, and Po. And my theory is that maybe a saucer went over and said, well, there's 2 little kids down there for our Get to Know a Human program. They tried my brother, and he wasn't passive enough.
Not a good subject for interplanetary relations.
You wouldn't want to put him in your saucer. You still wouldn't. And then, well, just briefly, the same season, I talked with an old guy recently who said that his cousin saw two little guys land in a saucer 5 miles away from where I grew up the same year. They got out of their saucer. They put water in a vessel from a stream. His cousin was baling hay out in the field. They put the water in the vessel, and they got back in the saucer and flew away. And he said his cousin was so afraid of community laughter and derision, he never told anybody but just this one old guy I talked to. And so that was like strange confirmation or near confirmation. 60 years later, we were talking about UFOs, me and this old guy who he knew my brother, is why he drove into my driveway. But the same year, there was a saucer landing 5 miles away.
Huh. Well, you have a wealth of information on all this, and that's why I think I've always kind of appreciated the way you attack this, if that's the right word, because most people who are like pie in the sky, new age bliss bunnies, I call them.
Right, bliss ninnies, I call them.
What do you call them?
Bliss ninnies, I call them.
Bliss ninnies. Okay, well that's interesting.
But with affection.
Yeah. Okay. Well, mine isn't quite so much affection, but no. I've had lady friends who are really deep in the
right.
I tolerate almost anything, to be honest with you. But
well, now go on with your compliment of me.
Yes. My feet are more firmly. It's kind of interesting because people see all the books that I've published, and it's well over 200 titles now, and think that I'm some wild fanatic who believes everything. And I have to tell them to slow down because, if anything, I'm a little bit. I'm either a fence setter or I'm, prone to be a little bit more conservative in my UFO thinking because. I don't know. Anybody, this is a field, UFOs being unidentified flying object. You can believe anything you want about them, and chances are half of what you believe is true.
Yeah. I know exactly where you're coming from, and so as you were saying about me, I have a little different attitude than a lot of New Agers. And yet I'm not a skeptic. I'm certainly not a skeptic, but I've tried to piece it together. I give the messages that Titus wants given, and I kid the old boy. I'm not terribly serious about it. I mean, he's not he doesn't want to be an ascended master or a commander. I always bristle a little bit at military titles for these beings. Titus doesn't like that. But then again, you see, he reflects me. I'm a bit of a rebel, so I don't know, but I like your attitude too, Tim. I respect it, and I'm a little different, but I'm not.
Well, we have there's room for everybody in this field, isn't that right, Angel?
Angel.
Oh. Angel. Oh, Angel. Isn't that right, Carla?
That is right.
Oh yeah, that doesn't sound like Carla.
Carla.
Hold on, let me feminize my voice here a little bit.
Okay.
That is right.
Okay, Angel. Yeah.
That's much better.
That's for the funny show that we do on Wednesday night. Yeah. Okay. So from how long were you in Ireland?
I was there 5 years.
And can you speak with an Irish accent for us?
No, but I studied the Irish language, and that's a hard language. But they have like the sword of light. You might have a word for this. Isn't exact, but this is an example. Something like lightning has one level of meaning, and then there's the sword of light on a deeper level, but it's the same word. And it's just a crazy language. Very hard to learn.
Did Tybus visit you when you were in Ireland?
Well, he sure channeled a lot. I had an old word processor that drove me nuts and had an old cabin. Oh, I did take some amazing photos in Ireland of what I call my flying gummy bear.
That's a great photo.
It is, and nobody's ever debunked it either. I defy anybody to debunk that thing. I took it on a camera that cost 15 punts, which was like $20 or something. Mm-hmm. A cheap camera, and my cat is in the picture, and yeah, it is and also there's a second frame, and the light form has changed from the flying gummy bear into a disc shape, into kind of a globby disc shape. So it changed. And there's a second frame. So it isn't like a bee sitting on the camera. It just isn't.
Yeah. We're going to have a fellow on the program in a couple of weeks, maybe next week even. He's written a book. I don't know the exact title. His name is Chris. Well, let's just call it Food of the Gods. It's like the interrelationship between food and liquids and aliens and Bigfoot and fairies.
Well, it's all kind different.
Yeah, it's different. Yes, and he's got a book that just came out on it.
Huh. Sounds interesting.
Yeah, it is. I'm looking forward to speaking with him. I just had the book published. It's only been out for a few days, and so it'll be coming up because we like to get people on the show here who are not overexposed. We want to hear. I want to get people on whose stories that I want to hear. That I can learn something from their relating their experiences to me. And some of the regulars, they're all right, but we've heard it, 50 times. And so let's move on and talk about something that, more, realistic. But speaking of realistic, you I remember you moved at that point from Ireland to Joshua Tree.
Yes, I did.
And you took your cats with you.
Oh, I came back into the States with 15 cats and a St. Bernard and a big golden Labrador. And it was before 9/11, or I never would have made it through JFK. You were waiting, Tim, on the other side.
I was going to ask, how did you get to the airport with all that? Yeah.
But they just laughed me through. The customs are like they didn't want anything to do with it. But, and
yes,
Tim was waiting on the other side of him. Yeah?
You had rented a van or something, and then your daughter came in and met me. I think she came in a day or two later, or something, because I know she wasn't with you, or maybe she hung out with me. I don't remember. That's quite a while ago. But you have had a menage. Is that the right word?
Menagerie. A menagerie.
Menagerie. That's the word. But
just don't end it in a trois, and you'll be okay.
No, well, that's yes. I got off on I was thinking of the wrong person. So
yes.
Well, I might have had a menage. I might have had a menage with my cats, but
yeah. Well, I remember one old pooch you had who was just a favorite of mine. Although sometimes he got on my case, was Ripley.
Ripley, the sheepdog. Yes, the old English sheepdog.
I was thinking of him the other day. That he if he's up in doggy heaven or something like that. I'm sure he is, rolling around and ready to bite my ankles again or something like that.
Ripley went to Amsterdam with me, and he died there. He was a great old dog. He used to talk in the back of the car. People were because it looked like he was talking. He would flap his jaw, and people in other cars were like laughing at us. So,
well, he was a character, but you certainly have treated your animals well. And I was asking you the other day if any of them were still living from Joshua Tree and all, and you said no, they weren't. So.
Right, but I do have a virtual cat sanctuary here because I have 10 acres and a big barn and a big old farmhouse. It isn't it isn't worth much of anything else. And there isn't an animal shelter in this county in Iowa. It's a big corporate farming county. And so the cats really just fields, like in winter, it's really brutal. And there used to be family farms that had cats and maybe would give them milk from the cows, but now the family farms really don't exist. It's all corporate. And feral cats have become my best friends, and one of them is my office cat. I've got over 70 cats here on 10 acres, and I'm always looking for donations, quite frankly, because it's a lot. I mean, they're in good health, they get vaccinations, good food, and but I wanted to give back to the animal, I have 2 dogs. Used to have 10, but that found homes for most of them. But they were my only friends in childhood. I did have invisible. They weren't friends. They were just a presence. When I was 7 or 8, I called them the remembers. And but outside of that, I was kind of a lonely kid because there just weren't any other kids around on the farm. And the cats and dogs were my friends, and I didn't want to just buy this place and not do something good with it. I didn't want to just walk around 10 acres. So if they come, they can. If they shall come, they can stay. As far as with
well, I know. I know. Even didn't the local newspaper do an article about you and one of the dogs and all?
They did. Yes, Lyle, the old German Shepherd. Yes, he's not with us anymore. He was old when I took him in, but. I've been on the local TV station. My dog Hannah and I bark out against dog fighting because she was used as bait in a dog fighting ring before I adopted her. So.
I have a friend who does a Rottweiler rescue service. That's Chrissy. We've known for a long time. Anyway, we're coming up on I guess 7 or 8 minutes here. So, Diane, tell us now. You've written, of course. I published a couple of your books.
Yes.
My favorite is Passport to Heaven.
That is a good book. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that tells about people who have had experience of seeing loved ones either emerging from UFOs or somehow associated with aliens. And
you wrote half of it, and I wrote half of it. Exactly.
Correct. Yeah. And I guess technically it was in print until my storage bin, when I had all these books. The weather got to it, the flood got to it, the rats got to it, and frankly, I mean, book sales have changed. Where you could sell hundreds of books before, you put it on Amazon and pray to the gods that somebody
exactly. Hard times, absolutely.
Yeah. Anyway, you have a reprint of The Transformation.
Yes.
Which is your original UFO experiences and your initial contact. Ibis.
Right. My memories of Ibis, and then my first channeling, and many people say that's their favorite book and it makes them cry, but that's a good thing, I guess. But it's
I always like that book because there's a photograph of you standing next to a stuffed alien with antenna on its head that somebody had left on the front porch, and it said E.T. call home.
DT, my initials.
DT. Oh,
phone
that's right.
home.
DT. Yeah. Because at that point, I think we were getting a little bit too much local publicity, and there was an I think there was an article in the paper. I had come.
Yes, there was.
And
I was a bit upset at the time. I kind of scared almost at the time because I thought, who would do? It was on my doorstep. It was kind of.
Yeah.
But looking back on it, why, ho, ho, ho.
Yeah, I think that was I think that was kind of hysterical. I mean, I don't think it was. I've had worse. I've certainly had worse frights than that. Okay, and you have a new book that I haven't even seen because you didn't send me a copy. It's called UFO Agenda. Do you want to know the truth?
Yes, and that is me. I say that's. How do I say this? It's Tybus channeling me. I decided to say in joking, it's a little different. It's science speculation about, it's got the 10 most likely sources of UFO occupants: dark matter, plasma, future humans, other dimensional. Anyway, I listed 10, not the only 10 sources, but it's got all sorts of crazy thoughts in it, far out, are they...
Is this your science book?
I would call it my science book, but I'm sure a scientist would say it's not extremely scientific. Yes. It's almost science fiction, only it's science speculation. Yes. There's no story to it. It's what if humans do manage to time travel? Then they'd be coming back to us, and anyway, it's things like that, and then reasons why maybe that might be.
Well, next time you come on, and you will be back on again, I assure you that. We need to talk about Captain Kirk in Star Trek.
I'll talk about that any day.
Yeah, because I know that you're a more than just a fan of the show. I mean, but it's a little bit too deep to get into at the moment.
Right.
But we could just tease them and say that there was a possibility that some of these characters were more than just characters on a TV show.
Well, I don't. Yeah, I think that Star Trek was an implanted vision, and that the characters wouldn't be exactly like on the TV show, but just to give us the idea that we could be out there in the galaxy, and maybe we are, and maybe our grandchildren are, but not just grandchildren. It's more of a matter of evolving our consciousness so that we actually, one of my buzz things is that I think we're on the threshold of becoming a new species. I think Homo sapiens is not the end of our line. And so,
I heard Clyde Lewis did a host show on that the other night, the new species of aliens and humans, the hybrids. Anyway, Diane, I want to thank you for coming on.
Oh, I enjoyed it.
Yeah, well, we got off to a grand start. We haven't talked in a while, and so we put this all in front of the public. And how do people get in touch with you?
I'm online at Diane Tessman 0@gmail.com. Diane Tessman all written together in little letters, and then 0.com. I have a lovely website, www.earthchangepredictions.com. I've gotten a lot of compliments on it. A friend designed it. It's rather unique. Yeah. And if they would want to order the transformation or UFO agenda from me in paper form, I'd autograph it. And my address is P.O. Box 352, St. Ansgar, Iowa, 50472.
Well, again, they can go to my postings on Facebook and I don't know, I must have posted the announcement about tonight's show probably on 50 different sites on Facebook, like I do every week. And they can find all this information and look at the photographs of you and your cat and look at photo of you. And I want to thank you for being on tonight, and we will do this again. And thank you for being the lovely person that you are.
It's very groovy. Yes.
Take it away there, St. Ansgar.
Okay. All right.
Thank you,
bye
Diane.
for now.
Bye.
And Angel. My God, we're back. Well, what an interview that was with Diane Tessman. We learned all about her travels around the world and her experiences with the being known as Tybus. I mean, she's like one of the few channelers and abductee type people that I can kind of get into because she's sensible. It's not like her mind is out on the cloud at 9 or on some other planet. It's right down here. But speaking of being right down here, out in Long Island, we have with us my favorite psychic, Maria Deandrea, professional psychic who was born in Budapest. She was born in Budapest, Hungary, and she's demonstrated spiritual awareness and psychic ability since childhood. Over her lifetime as a spiritual leader, she has provided excellent psychic guidance and enlightenment to many people. She gives classes, workshops, has written, I think seven or eight books that we've published, including Heaven Sent Money Spells, and I wish that would take effect right away. Secret Magical Elixirs of Life for those of us who want to live longer. Your personal mega power spells, and Occult Grimoire and Magical Formulary. And then there are a few others. She a book coming out actually in a couple of weeks. We just finished it up and we're waiting for our main graphics honcho, Bill Kern, to organize it and put it all together. It's simple spells with playing cards. No need to go out and buy an expensive deck of tarot. Go down and spend $1 at the dollar store for a pack of regular ordinary cards, and you're all set. Right, Maria?
Yes, you are. Hi, how are you? Thank you so much for having me on the show.
Well, I would have you anywhere. I mean...
Whoa. Hola, Maria.
Geez. I could really put my foot in my mouth.
Deep in there, huh, Teddy?
Or there, yes.
Yes. The water on your knees squishing your thirst right now. That's how deep is it there.
we always start at the beginning. And my grandparents came from Hungary as well. And my grandmother, she had some psychic experience. Well, the whole family did, but she kept a diary which was in Hungarian, so I couldn't read it, about some of her dreams and things like that. And I think
I can help you with that.
Well, I don't have it anymore. But one of our one or two of our books have actually been published in Hungarian. And believe me, they pay big advances, like $200 or $300. I mean, you're going to get a Hungarian authors must really make a living. Actually, today they probably make more than American authors do. And that's pretty sad. Anyway, Maria, take it from the beginning. You escaped from Czechoslovakia during the communist.
Actually, I came
era?
over during the revolution in Hungary.
Yes.
And then we were in Austria for about a year, and then we came to this country. And it's actually really funny. My father, who's passed away, my parents have passed away a while ago, and my father was always psychic. And then with my mother, both my grandparents were trance mediums. It skipped her, but she was just, into herbs. But, everybody in Europe is into herbs. And then both my sons are psychic. So it's really funny. We believe everybody is, though.
Yeah. Let me stop you there a minute. When you say trance mediums, what does that? Were they physical mediums? Did they have ectoplasm forming in the room and tables tipping and levitating and all of that?
No, trance medium just means that you're getting yourself out of the way for spirit to come through you and give information using your body, as opposed to a different form. As an example, when you're working on a different level, you're getting information from spirit. As an example, psychically, you're just getting information from your source or from spirit or wherever you're tuned into in a positive level, and you're passing on information where you're 100% aware and you're 100% in control. You're not allowing anything to come through you. I find I've done trance medium work, but I honestly try to stay away from it because, unfortunately, I'm a Leo, so I'm one of those people where I don't like to give up 100% control. So this way, when I get psychic information, I'm getting it from my source, and I do believe in divine power. So it's like tuning into a source for information to be able to pass it on, but it's not literally a spirit taking over my body.
Uh-huh. Your one of your mottos is do only positive. What exactly do you mean by that?
Well, first of all, I'm a shaman through Europe, and I'm also an interfaith minister, and I truly believe that whatever you put out, good, bad, or indifferent, always comes back to you. So I'm a very strong believer in only doing positive work, whether it's spiritual work or anything personal in your life, like, unimportant things like ethics. So I really feel that even when I teach classes, I teach, spiritual, metaphysical, psychic, paranormal classes. I only teach the positive side because I really feel the more people can do for themselves, the more they can help others, and the better the world gets. So it's only on a positive level.
Yeah, but let's be realistic. Don't a lot of people that want to see a psychic or a gypsy or somebody, aren't they looking for the gree-gree and the black magic?
Yes, they are. But there's always a positive way to accomplish just about everything. If somebody's looking literally for negative work, they're just going to have to find somebody other than me. I don't do negative. And I really believe, like I said, whatever you put out comes back. But on a positive level, you can pretty much accomplish just about anything. So it's totally non-limited. Even when you're working psychically, people have a misunderstanding of it. People always think with psychic information that it's written in stone. And I know, Tim, you've heard that one before. Mm-hmm. And it really isn't. Psychic information is really meant as a guide. So as an example, if I'm doing a reading, what I do is if I'm telling people something positive, If they leave their life alone, that's exactly how it's coming up. It's their natural path of life. If I'm telling them something negative, it will always tell them what caused the negative situation, and then it will always tell them what they can do themselves, not me, what they can do themselves to avoid it, improve it, or change it in some manner so that it's a much better situation. And then it's their free will whether they make the change or not. If something negative is coming up and they have absolutely no control at all, I would never get the information because there's no point. You know, it's not like somebody upstairs going, ha, it won't work. And actually, most of my clients are businessmen because I like details. You know, so I find with businessmen, they really can't afford to play with company money.
That's very true.
Didn't you tell me about an experience you had with somebody in the military?
Oh, yeah. I used to work with the military. I was a tracker. And it was really funny. It was years ago. And, you know, I was hired really to find missing objects, people. And this wonderful gentleman that was a captain in the Army, he called me up. Everybody went up for maneuvers in upstate New York. And they came back, and they're missing a Jeep. So he called me up, and he wanted me to find the Jeep. And I said to him, the first thing I said to him was, ask the guys where they left it. But no, you know, sometimes, you know, the captain really doesn't want to tell people that they lost the Jeep. So I told him that I felt that it was in their armory. So he went and he checked, and he came back and called me, and he said it wasn't there. So we did this for about 3 months on and off. For 3 months, I kept saying to him, it feels to me like it's in the armory. And he'd call me back, and he'd go, no, it isn't. And then after 3 months, he called me up, and he apologized, because what actually happened was when they came back from maneuvers, the people in the armory, they took apart the Jeep to refurbish it. So it was in the armory the whole time. It's just that it was in little pieces all over the place. And the reason that they found it is because after the 3 months, they had it all put back together again.
Oh, wow.
So you never know how it's actually going to work.
Well, how exactly did you become aware of that? I mean, did you have a vision? Did it come through a reading?
No, honestly, there's no other way to explain it. Sometimes it's just, I just know. There's no other way to put it. It's, as an example, somebody will ask a question, and I'll give them an answer. And after I give them an answer, I go, oh, how did I do that? So it just comes. Sometimes I get clairvoyance, which is psychically seeing. So I'll see people or objects or a map, as an example. Sometimes
how often does that happen? How often does that happen compared to where you just have a vision or just you just know it?
Well, because I do this full time, 90% of the time it's that I just know. But I do get visions. So it really depends on the situation. I truly never know ahead of time how I'm going to get the information. People always assume that if you work in one particular modality, that's the way you're always going to get the information. But it really isn't. It changes. Like sometimes I get automatic writing. Sometimes I have different experiences, like, I have out-of-body experiences, or I've been telekinetic. So, it's a little bit different. Yeah, so it's different each time.
Carla, have you ever had a psychic reading?
I think we lost Carla again. I don't know what's going on with her.
Oops.
Okay. Bleep, bleep, blump, blump.
See if we can get her back on.
Oh,
but anyway,
yeah.
I had a psychic experience. Actually, I lived in a house that had all kind of psychic activity. True story. When we first moved to Miami from New Orleans, we moved into this really old home, and I was maybe like 9 or 10 years old, and I actually seen a couple things happen. I saw keys slide from one corner of the desk to another by themselves. I saw the TV turn on and off a bunch of times by itself. My mother and brother really saw a lot of activity at the house, though.
I had a lot. It got
so bad that we left the house after a couple months of being there.
Carla, are you back with us, Carla?
Yes, I am.
Oh, I was asking you, have you ever had a psychic reading?
Yeah, several.
And would you say that that they benefited you?
They I really feel like well, I don't think I've had a psychic reading. I've had my cards read.
Well, that's a psychic reading.
Yeah. My stepmother does card reading. She read my cards a couple times. It was funny. About maybe 10 years ago, she did the first reading for me, and I was just starting to work at this travel agency, and they had found out about it. I had just started this new job, and it was the first time I ever got a reading. And she started going through the cards, and she goes to me, "I see you're going to be leaving in a hurry, pretty soon to go on some kind of a trip. Something's going to happen with the trip." And sure enough, about 2 months later, I went on a trip. But then I started thinking to myself, I was like, wait a second. She knows I'm a travel agent, and she's going to go on a trip.
I actually got divorced on a psychic.
I don't think you have to be a psychic to know that I was eventually going to go out on a trip.
No, I had to be a psychic to realize I was going to get divorced. That's how I divorced.
No. Nowadays, with the way the divorce rate is, you don't have to be a psychic to.
No. I was getting a reading.
It's going to happen. You're a statistic. That's not a psychic. You're a statistic.
I was getting a reading. And the woman, first she was reading my palm, and she said, blah, 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 and I see that you were dating a lot, you're trying to settle down. I said, I'm married. And she was holding the hand with I said, you're holding the hand with my ring on it. She said, oh. She said, I don't see it. I don't see it either. So
at that point, the reading is over. I'm sorry. That's a wrap.
I think a lot of times in psychic readings, I think that they...
Yeah, no kidding.
I think you're putting something out there that you're asking yourself, really. And I think that you kind of resolve it yourself if you're kind of open to it. I mean, I think a lot of times, I think somehow you're answering your own questions with a psychic reading.
Well, it depends on the psychic. It depends if the person actually is intuitive or if the person's just doing it to make money and it's a hoaxer. Really depends, because I do believe there is.
Unfortunately, we have a lot of people in the field that are not real.
Yeah,
and we've always had that, but I think it's a little bit more dominant nowadays because of the media and everything else that's out there. And people are going to assume that everybody's like that. I know some wonderful people in my field, but there are very few of them, honestly.
For years, one of the biggest names in the psychic world was Sylvia Browne, and Sylvia Browne turned out to be one of the biggest hoaxers or liars. She's dead now, but there was one time that she was on the Montel Williams show. I don't know if you were familiar that she was on the show a lot.
Heard of that?
Yeah.
And she was on the show, and she was talking to some people in the audience, and she's telling them about how their son is dead because he was missing, and they didn't know where he was. And she tells them, "Oh, he's dead. He passed away, and he's in the river or something." She goes on and on and on. The son wasn't dead. He was with his girlfriend somewhere. He had just disappeared for a couple of weeks.
Yeah, well, somebody that really kick would never have said that, even if the situation was that. They wouldn't have put it like that. Because you're not going to shock the parent.
Not on the air, yeah.
You know what?
Especially on the air, but even in private, you would never say it like that to somebody. That's like you might as well just hit them.
Yeah, completely.
Emotionally.
I did have an interesting experience, though, in the neighborhood. I was at the salon, and I've been at my salon for 11 years in one place, and it's not like I had the money to move it because this town is booming so much that it's just everything has gotten very expensive, and it's very hard to get your inspections, and you really need deep pockets to try to open a business around here at this stage of the game. And this weird little Indian guy, that's all I could describe him, came into my salon with a little turban on too. I never saw this guy before. He's like, "Hello, my good lady," and he wanted to read me. It was completely random out of nowhere, but this is how my place is. All these characters just walk in and out all the time, and I embrace them.
You even had a tall white alien.
Yeah.
There.
I had a tall white came in there. But I embrace everybody. But this guy came in,
he came from Planet MBA.
No, but I told him, I said, "Listen, if this is money, I really don't have any money, for a reading." He said, "No, let me just do it." And he told me all these things that were ridiculously unbelievable. And I have to say, and it was such a positive reading that I wound up giving him $20 anyway. I fished it out of the drawer even. I'm like, "Here, just fabulous.
Just take my money."
Even though he wanted 30 at the end of it, but I only gave him 20. That's all I had. But I have to say, looking back, all these things happened, and they were really quite remarkable things that I would have never guessed in the time frame. This guy came out of nowhere. I never saw him again. He kind of walked in, told me all this positive stuff, and then it actually started to happen. I mean, I did move the business. I did find the money. You know what I mean? Just one thing after another, and it is pretty strange, so. I forgot all about them because it was so random. You know.
Well, it's funny how it works, too, because people always assume that you're reading them, because I work internationally because I can read over the phone or in person, and people always think they have to be in front of you, but they don't, because it's not like you're doing body language or, some people that are not real, they're going to look at, the colors that you're wearing, and you can't really read from the colors that somebody's wearing, because what if everything else was in the wash, But basically the way we actually read is we're not reading the person because that's telepathy, then we're telling them what they want to hear. What we're doing actually is tuning into a source, whether you call it divine power or God or whatever you want to call it. It's like we're tuning into a source to get information for them and about them. We're not actually tuning into the person.
Could you give me a reading?
Sure.
Or is it too personal?
No, that's I honestly never know what's going to come up until at the moment.
Well, if anything comes up, let me know.
Let me guess, are you getting any feelings that the other guy on the line here is kind of a funny dude? Is that kind of...
Which one?
Me. I'm a funny one.
Hey, man. Hey, I've got a list of subjects here. Because,
sure.
Maria is really so versatile. I mean, most people in the psychic field, they read cards, maybe they read rune stones. I had a girlfriend one time when I was running the New York School of Occult Arts and Sciences, which was one of the first metaphysical centers in the country. She read candle wax. She would take a candle and drip the wax into a glass of water and do a reading from that. And, she was darn accurate.
I had a girlfriend who did other things with wax, but we can't talk about that.
Yeah. Well, I was going to mention that too. But that's
not on this show anyway. Unraveling other secrets.
Yeah, that's on Skywatchers. That's Wednesday night.
Yeah, there you
go. Anyway, so you know what we're going to do? We're going to play a little game, Maria and I. I'm going to.
I know those games.
I'm going to throw out a word or a series of words, and I want you to tell me what your thoughts are on the subject, what you know about it, and whether you've ever practiced it.
Sure.
Okay, let's start out with let's start out with an easy one: psychokinesis.
Okay, now psychokinesis, and I've had that experience. Psychokinesis is basically a field where your mind is very, very focused, and it's a combination of psychic energy and mental focus to be able to move objects. Okay, so but it is conscious. Now, the funny part is I've had that experience where I was working psychically and metaphysically for a couple of months constantly because this is what I do full time. And I was with a friend of mine, and we were at a diner, and I was talking to him, and I went to touch his arm. He was sitting across the table from me, and as I went to move, the butter dish just moved right along with me on the table. And all I could think of was, please don't let anybody see this. And just because I had a lot of excess energy, things like that tend to happen to me. So it was funny because every now and then, objects will move around the room. I had a very nice lady that came to me for a reading a while ago, a couple of years ago, and I'm talking to her. And as I'm talking to her, I had a bookshelf with some books on it, and the books started flying across the room just because my energy was so high. And she kept going, no, I believe. And I'm like, no, it's not on purpose.
Maybe I was causing the
And I couldn't shut it off because I wasn't doing it on purpose.
You don't drive,
but normally,
do you?
Psychokinesis is consciously trying to move something. But, sometimes we get fallout.
Well,
you don't drive, do you?
She drives.
What?
Yes.
I said you don't drive, do you?
Not after I work, honestly.
Yeah.
If I'm working for a couple of hours, I will not get in a car to drive. Otherwise, yes.
Yeah.
Don't because I'm not working.
Mm-hmm.
Well, because my energy shift. Because what happens is, and this actually happened to me years ago, which is why I gave up driving after. I was working somewhere doing a lecture, and the lecture ended up really late, and I was in New York on the Parkway. It was about 1 or 2 in the morning, and I saw this wonderful Native American walking across the Parkway, but I didn't see where the car in front of me was, and I jammed on the brake. Unfortunately, a couple of guys behind me, if they would have been closer in the car, for some reason they didn't see the dead person, the Native American.
Oh, yeah. Uh-huh.
But they were far behind me because it happened to be about 1 or 2 in the morning.
Yeah.
So it didn't cause a problem, but it might have. So after that, I just stopped driving after I work.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, I had.
You got to be careful when you see a Native American. Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
I knew this one fellow who was a psychic healer. In fact, I talked to John Lennon and Yoko Ono on the telephone. It's going back a long time ago.
Wow.
Because this fellow had been written up in the newspaper. His name is Dean Kraft. I just found out he actually died like a year and a half or 2 years ago. I went to his wedding. And I was his publicist, actually paid publicist for a while. I had my own public relations company, and he was getting very well known. He actually had clients, and they were paying money, and he was doing lectures, and even I think he did some experiments, maybe Maimonides' Dream Lab or something. Anyway, I was over his house one day, and I think his father was in the room, and my associate Harold Sulkin was there, and he had a pen in his hand. And after we had a conversation, I know that maybe lasted a half an hour or so, he tossed the pen on the floor and moved his hands behind it or in front of it, and without touching the pen, it followed the path of his fingers. He didn't have. I'm sure he didn't have a string or a wire or anything like that attached to it. Now, John Lennon, of course, was always fascinated with UFOs. He had his own UFO sighting, which is described in our book. Shirley MacLaine Meets the Palladians, which just came out. It's a celebrity UFO encounters book. It's only been out about a week. But John Lennon, of course, had a UFO sighting. He even wrote about it wrote some lyrics for one of his songs, Strange Days Indeed, I think the song is. But anyway, he was fascinated with he was a friend of Uri Geller's, too, and was fascinated with UFOs and the paranormal and all. And Dean Kraft was over his apartment when they lived in the Dakota, and according to John Lennon, I have the notes on this here somewhere, Dean Kraft passed his hand over the candy dish that was on the coffee table, and a couple of hard candies kind of rolled out and went across the coffee table and fell onto the floor. So, I mean, that's one of the reasons that we took him on as a client, because he did seem to have these uncanny ability not only to heal certain people, but also to have these paranormal experiences. All right, next term here, numerology.
Okay, well, that's a very ancient system, and it's using numbers, whether it's your birthday or the year, or sometimes actually they use numbers connected to the alphabet so that it connects to your name. And it's a way of predicting what's going to come up in the future, what's going on with you now. It's according to the numbers. However, there are some fields like numerology, palmistry, and astrology. They're considered more of a science. And then after that, if somebody's psychic, they add in their intuitive abilities. And the reason it's considered more of a science is because it's more factual. As an example, with astrology and with numerology, once you know the numerology, you know what the numbers relate to, then you just look up the meanings. Same thing with astrology, you have charts. So with numerology, you have a different type of chart than astrology, but it still comes down to pretty much the same thing. They look at it as the vibration of the numbers connect to you. As an example, with somebody's birthday, if their birthday has, say, a lot of twos in it, like February, whatever. If it has a lot of two, the tendency for the person is to be very good dealing with other people, and they tend to be very good counselors, teachers, people along that line, rather than somebody that wants to work all by themselves and, say, run a business. So it correlates, but it's more a matter of science. And the reason they say it like that is because, and all metaphysics happens to be based on science. They look at it as its cause and effect. So they're looking at it as if you repeat the same situation hundreds of times and you always get the same result, science, then they start passing on the knowledge. And that's the same way that the paranormal world works. It's the oldest science. Magic is really the oldest science, like alchemy. Well, chemistry is an example. Chemistry came out of alchemy. Physics actually came out of metaphysics. Yeah. So it's considered a science. It's knowing the numbers and the vibrations and the frequency of how it relates to the individual or the situation.
Well, Maria, one of the books you wrote that we published is Secret Magical Elixirs of Life. And that reminds me, you mentioned alchemy, Count Saint Germain. Mm-hmm. Do you know who he was?
Oh, of course.
Okay.
Saint Germain was connected to the violet flame. Do you want me to talk about it a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, he's one of he's one of the most fascinating characters in all of occultism, next to maybe John Dee, and that'll be the next character you can talk about.
Right. Because basically, he was very, very heavy into alchemy and very, very knowledgeable. And again, we look at it as science because it's cause and effect. And he was also connected to what they call the violet flame, because he felt that if you're visualizing the violet flame around you and going through you, it was cleansing energy. It's very high energy. It's connected to your crown chakra. And they look at it as when you're running that violet flame through you and around you, it's a cleansing energy, because they literally look at it as a flame that it burns away everything that is blocking or stopping you from getting ahead in your life. And he was one of the first people that talked about the violet flame and how it affects everybody, and what you can do consciously to raise that energy, or to do a meditation with the violet flame that's going to get rid of the blocks that are slowing you down in your life, whether it's physical, emotional, mental. But he was very, very well known in the paranormal field.
Well, he was friends with the queens and royalty, and the funny thing was he would disappear for several decades, and then he would show up. Again, he's believed to be over 500 or 600 years old, and the rumor has it that he was also there at the signing of the Declaration of Independence.
Right. Well, they do say that flame takes care of a lot of different things.
Mm-hmm. Well, now he
was very well known, though, for being able to work with alchemy, and that's part of alchemy is longevity.
Well, also too, I guess he had. He was liked by the high courtesans because he was always. I guess he was kind of like the Liberace of his day. He was always decked out. He didn't have. He didn't see. Well, not that. Okay. He didn't seem to have. He didn't seem to have He didn't seem to have a job, right?
Right.
He traveled all over Europe. He spoke
the Queen took care of a lot of his bills and his travels.
Yeah. But they also liked it because he had all this jewelry, and I guess he did give some of it away. I know I would certainly like to have something from Count Saint Germain in my collection.
Right.
Yeah, that would certainly be a collector's piece. But we had a psychic who's now deceased, very well known, and we've published a lot of his book, William Alexander Orabello, and he gave a workshop one time. I think in Philadelphia we were. And we had a psychic fair and then some workshops, afterward people could sign up for. And he channeled Count Saint Germain. And when we went and looked at the VHS, that was the video at the moment, looked at the VHS tape, there he was surrounded in this violet light. And I was in the room when this was going on. There was it was my camera. There was no gels on the camera. There was no weird lighting on the ceiling or anything. And in fact, we still have we put that out on the DVD, and that was quite a job to do because those VHS tapes were not very good, quality, and we didn't shoot it in some fancy Hollywood studio. I had the holding onto the tripod for dear life that it didn't fall over because. Your tripod always lost a leg somewhere along the line, but I for sure, Count Saint Germain is to me is a real character. So how about John Dee?
Yeah. And well, actually, just one more thing with St. Germain. I teach a lot of classes, and one of them is on the violet flame, and we go through a meditation so that everybody can have that feeling of energy and of the cleansing. And it's amazing how many people actually feel like they have like little electrical energy going through them. You know, because we do get feedback. Some people feel it, some people don't. But it works whether you feel it or not. But it's amazing how many people actually feel that, you know. Oh, and by the way, I was going to mention, we were talking earlier about Tesla.
Yes.
Remember? I was going to mention that Tesla, people just don't understand how much he actually did in the paranormal field besides everything else that he did. And one of the reasons I was telling you that I really love Tesla is because he was very analytical and a scientist, but he was also very spiritual. And he's the one that did the plates.
That's correct.
The Tesla plate. And I think you carry them.
Energy plates. Yes, we do. Now, in fact, one of the other hosts on the PSN network, Tim Schwartz, was on Ancient Aliens last night. The program or the episode was on Nikola Tesla, and of course, he's written several books on the topic, including Lost Journals of Nikola Tesla, and a number of books which are available on Amazon. And so they were interviewing him because he's one of the experts on the subject.
And the reason I brought it up actually was because the plates are violet, you know, from the violet flame connection. So the energy can actually be tested scientifically on a vibrational frequency level, that it gives off a different frequency if they make it exactly the way he set to make them. Because I know the ones that you have, and I always tell people to get it from you because you have the real ones. And then people have knockoffs and they wonder why the vibration doesn't work.
They have to have the special symbol that's stamped into them. Anyway, John D.
Okay. Well, I find with John D, I have an interest in John D, but apparently not as much as some other people. But I find that he was very, very positive, for lack of a better term. I was trying to think of how to say that. He was very, very positive, and he was known as an extremely heavy, well, I was going to say a heavy hitter, but then I was trying to think of a better word for it, in the paranormal field.
Well, he conjured up.
I find
he was
no,
known,
go ahead.
He was known for conjuring up angels.
Right, but I'm saying that's a normal way of dealing. And he's the one that came up with the Enochian language of the angels, the Enochian alphabet.
Yeah, in fact,
I'm saying we consider him more of an occultist because of that, plus tuning in psychically.
In the book, Angel Spells that you worked on, we had a lengthy section in the book on the Enochian language and the charts and the symbols and all, which is very hard for the average person, including me, to understand. So you came up with symbols that the average person could use to contact their
to have direct contact on the angelic level.
With their guardian angel. And my friend Alan Greenfield, who's been on the show several times here, he was on Ground Zero with Clyde Lewis, and he read one of your Mitaran. He recited one of the rituals for Mitaran, which is the angel of the whirlwind. And, the next day, the roof of the radio station where Ground Zero is broadcast blew off. And, at first I thought Clyde was, telling a story, because Clyde can go on for, 20 or 30 minutes just on one thing. But I checked it, I Googled it, and sure enough, here's a video on YouTube of the roof of the building sitting in the street. So hey,
well,
I don't know. You got to watch. Yeah, you got to watch it, Marie, with some of those angel spells.
Well, you know what it is? It's really funny. The way I actually got them was through trance, because between a combination of meditation to get into the trance, that's really how I got the symbols. And the symbols, basically, I just saw as a vision. And then the rest of it really just came to me, the colors and whatever matched with it, the symbols. So if you stick exactly to what it says, you're actually calling in archangels and angels on a very specific level. And really, you're not going to find that anywhere else because I got it as direct information. It's not something I looked up. It came to me specifically. And I always put in books, before you do anything like this, you always put up some form of psychic self-defense, some form of protection. Because even if you're calling in a positive angelic force, you're opening a portal or a gateway. And when you open a portal, even if you're asking for a positive angel as an example or a positive spirit to come to you, you have an open portal, you don't know what's hitchhiking along. Yeah, that's like everybody was calling in angels for a while, and they still are. But when you're just calling in an angel in general, people forget there are fallen angels. You don't know what you're getting if you're not calling it in correctly or by name.
So how do you protect yourself from getting a fallen angel?
Well, she has specific instructions.
Well, first of all, there's really a very heavy technique, but honestly, it takes a couple of hours to actually teach that. But on a minimal level, what works is if you put out something like, as an example, if you focus on, say, divine power, protect me, okay, or whoever you believe in. I happen to believe in God, okay. But if you're saying divine power or God or whoever you believe in, it has to be who you believe in as your source, because otherwise the energy doesn't match your frequency and it won't work, okay. So whatever label you use, as an example, you would say, God protect me. And you're saying who your source is. You're telling your source what you want done. But you have to say it with a lot of respect, and you have to be really serious in your heart when you say it, or it's truly not going to work. So on a minimal level, that would help. But you need to do your own technique. Or like I said, mine takes pretty much it's an all-day class. So it takes also time. But that should at least start.
Also, to Maria, if you're using a ritualistic altar to do your work, you can put out rose petals, water in a scrying bowl, and of course burn white candles.
Right, and put sea salt in the water. That will do that. And the scrying, I love the scrying bowls because you can see so much in there. But for the protection, if you just put water and rose petals in there and a little bit of sea salt, because that's a very, very ancient technique. Mm-hmm. It isn't something new. And I find that I love working with the ancient techniques because they're very simple, they're very direct, and they're very powerful. They really work. And then when you have people that updated, when they update ancient systems or rituals, if they know what they're updating, it's great. But a lot of people update it because they read something in one book, they mixed it with another book, and they don't realize they're diluting it. It's not going to work. It's like a recipe. If your great-grandmother had a wonderful recipe for something and they pass it down and everybody sticks exactly to the recipe, it's going to be perfect every time. If they keep changing it, they're going to wonder down the road why it doesn't taste the same. Same principle.
That's a good point, yeah.
Okay, crystals. Do they really work?
Yes. First of all, if you look at crystals, gemstones, herbs and oils, they all work the same way. They work on a vibrational level, and with all of them, as long as they're within 3 feet of your body, they will work for you. It works as a magnet. If it's farther than 3 feet away from you, they still work. They're just not attracting to you. So they will attract positive things. They will repel negative. Think of it more literally as a magnet. So depending on the properties of the gemstone, that's what it attracts to you. So as an example, if you were using, say, pyrite, which is also called fool's gold, that actually attracts finance or the opportunity for finance into your life. Oh, and talking about protection, if you use the gemstone tiger eye, which is a brown stone, if you use tiger eye, that also is a level of protection. It just means you need to carry it with you. So, as an example, if you're using pyrite, there's an occult law that says like attracts like. to the point of carrying that is because it looks like gold, or if you wear gold jewelry as an example, like attracts like. So the more you carry situations and, things that have value, the more you attract it in. That's like, I was at a radio station, I was at KISS FM a couple of years ago, and I was talking to some of the rappers, in the room while you're waiting to go on, and they really have a lot of gold chains. And the reason they have that is that working from a metaphysical point, they actually look at it as the more you have on, the more money you attract. So I'm thinking to myself, I have to go out and get some more gold.
Or learn how to rap, one or the other.
Exactly. Need more bling.
Yeah, there you go.
But a lot of the new rappers really didn't understand the principle, but it did come from a spiritualist church, from a spiritualist outlook originally, that, the more you wear or the more you carry, the more it attracts. But there is the occult law of like attracts like, which means, as an example, you ever notice that if you're a positive person, you feel comfortable around positive people, around up people. You're not going to feel comfortable around people that lie and cheat or are negative. If somebody is negative, they're not going to feel comfortable around positive people. So you can actually watch it. It's funny.
Yeah, it's the secret. It's the laws of attraction.
Yeah.
Now, Maria, how does what you do differ from? Okay, you're an occultist. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. How does that differ from Wicca or witchcraft?
Okay. Basically, they're all the same. This is the thing. Occult just means ancient wisdom and hidden knowledge. It isn't positive or negative. It's not religion. The practitioner is positive or negative. So as an occultist, you really use whatever situation or modality fits what you're working on. So as an example, it doesn't matter if it's Wicca, if it's voodoo, because that started out as a positive religion, or if you're using European magic or Macumba or Haitian, as long as you're working on the positive side, you're going to get positive results. Okay, but occult is occult. It doesn't matter which modality you use. You just have to actually know what you're doing because they're all ancient. And pretty much, if you really look at all the modalities, they all have the same base. As an example, we're saying like attracts like. Every single modality believes that. So the base is the same. It's just really a preference. It's like years ago I was doing a reading for a lady, and she was actually from, I think, Barbados. And everything I got for her in the reading that had to do with metaphysics, with occult, connected her to England, which actually didn't make any logical sense. She actually told me she was from Barbados before we started. England made no sense. And after we were done with the reading, she was laughing because I kept saying, I don't know why England. And she was laughing because she said most of her family for generations happened to be from England, and they worked on the occult side, on the positive side, with ministry and with shamanism and other modalities, but they were all from England, and she was the first generation in Barbados. So you never know, right?
Oh, wow.
What? How did you learn? Okay, so you do you utilize like ruin stones, tarot cards, a regular deck of cards, numerology. How did you learn all this?
Well, some of it I actually learned with Hungarian shamanism. Okay. And by the way, I'm a shaman through Hungary, but I'm also a shaman with the Tuscarora tribe in North Carolina. I'm an honorary member. And it's funny, they're always teasing me that I'm the first Hungarian Native American, because there's no such thing. Either one or the other. But a lot of it I learned through shamanism from Hungary. And a lot of it I learned through books, just like everybody else. But most of it I really learned through visions and meditation. They just come to me. And then the more I do it and I realize that they work, then I can actually work with it for other people. But it takes years to actually get to the point where you feel like, okay, it really works every time I do this particular formula.
Now, you worked on this book on the reading the playing cards. but you also read tarot. Now, how did the two of those differ? Did the tarot cards were they derived from a regular deck of cards, or was it the other way around, or is there no connection at all?
No, they're actually connected. The tarot card has a minor arcana, which basically connects to your everyday life. It's telling you about your job, your love life, what's going on in your life in the mundane or the physical plane. Okay, and the higher arcana tells you more about your goals, your spiritual levels, what direction to go in, what path. Now, the playing cards are actually the lower arcana. That's what they came from. So if you know the lower arcana in the tarot deck, you can read the cards. Now, through time, they've readjusted a lot of the basic cards so that they also have their own meaning. So now it's a combination of the two.
Well, now with the playing cards, you've actually derived spells. You could use the cards to perform psychic spells, occult spells with them.
Oh, definitely. Basically, any tool that you have, whether it's runes or the cards or tea leaves, anything that you have that's connected on the energetic level to psychic information, and basically they're all just a focus because we don't actually need the tools. They give you that extra focus. And I find that, like with the runes as an example, they just give me more detail. But when you're using the cards, you can actually, as long as you know what the cards mean and it's in the book, okay, you can actually perform spells to bring in positive things into your life and to help you. And the way I got most of it, again, I get most of my information very direct. And that's why, sometimes you and I laugh because they're not going to be written anywhere else because I got it through visions and through meditation sometimes, but a lot of times I just know. There's no other way to put that. Or with the cards, I was actually seeing them in layouts and how to put them and what to do with them, and then I just have to remember to write it down quick before it disappears on me. Well, and then Maria, I do it for a while to make sure that it actually works before I would tell anybody else about it.
Well, I have to say, Maria, that as far as I know, you are the most knowledgeable person on the overall aspects of the occult. I mean, most people have their specialties, but you have a good background in all of this, and it certainly has to be intuitive. It's not something that you could just pick up from books. It has to be something that comes to you naturally. Now, we're closing in on the hour, and I do want to give you the opportunity to tell our listeners where they can get in touch with you and find out about your services. But I do just want to tell the listeners also that I'm making a very rare public appearance. I will be at the reunion meeting, the 51st reunion of the National UFO Congress, which is being held in Cleveland, Ohio, June 19th to the 22nd. So anybody's around in Ohio or West Virginia, or you want to take a little trip, I'm taking the train myself. It's about 14 hours from Manhattan here, but I love the train, and I like to look outside the window, and it should be enjoyable. And there's no, people. Yes.
Yes.
You were saying?
Yeah, I love taking trips with you. I'm just thinking about it.
Well, why don't you come?
She was giving her approval. That's all.
Maybe I will.
I would like you to do. I would like you to do that. Anyway, that'll be June.
I'm not invited. I see, huh? All right, that's fine.
Well, you got to come from Miami.
That's a long trip.
I was going to go. I was going to go see my friend Charlotte, who lives in Tucson, by train. I figured I would continue on from Cleveland to Tucson. It's a 59-hour trip.
Wow, you're on your own. You're on your own.
No, I'm not. I'm not going. I just said, I'll do it some other time, and then coming back, you got to add the 59 hours plus the 13 hours or something. I mean,
you take the bus from New York to Colorado.
I did do that once, yes, and that took 3 days. Yeah, 3 days. Yeah. But it's
Tim,
worth going the other. You can get to Denver like on the highway, but you can't go between. There's too many. There's mountains. It's what it is, and the tunnels. They spent billions of dollars to put tunnels through the mountains there, and it's slow. If you try to drive it, it's slow is taking the train, maybe even slower. Because I tried driving one time from, I think, Phoenix to Colorado, and it took forever because everything was like 10 miles an hour. It's all winding roads through the mountains, and you need to stay awake, and it's impossible, and it takes forever. Anyway, Maria, we're getting down to the wire here. Give us your information. Give us your website, your email address. People can go to Amazon to buy your books.
Give us all.
And go for it. Go for it.
Okay. If you put my name, which is just Maria Deandrea, and that's D'', capital ANDREA, into Google, I'm on Amazon, Kindle, Nook. I'm on YouTube. Apparently, I'm all over the media, and it also has my website for the ministry, but for readings and for classes and for public speaking and lectures, basically for everything else. And the website is just mariadeandrea.com. My phone number is 631-559-1248. So if anybody wants to call, I'm more than happy to talk to them. And my email address is mdeandrea100@gmail.com.
And you promise to read your email?
Yes, I try very hard. Electronic things just tend to blow up on me, so sometimes it'll be down for a couple of days, but I try. The best way to get in touch with me really is just to call me. I do text, and you can call.
And Carla, what do you have on your agenda?
I have a lot going on. I have tomorrow at Balance at my salon, Gallery Artist Hub in Jersey City. I have a comedy show from 5 to around 7. And then on Friday, I have an art opening from 8 until 11. And then on the 14th, we're having an Oi party. Oi.
Oi, they? And in between all the partying, you cut hair.
I cut hair the whole time. Yeah.
Wow. That's amazing. That's amazing. And Angel, how about you?
Well, on Monday I got Future Theater, and then on Wednesday I have Skywatchers Radio with our guest Larry Sekander, who's going to be on the show. Great guy.
All right. And it's a great network to listen to, and the future looks very bright for PSN Radio. And again, this is Tim Beckley and Carla Anderson and the Jackal on Unraveling the Secrets. And we, unless an asteroid hits the Earth, we will be back here same time next week. And don't forget to look for the archived shows on PSN Radio Network. They're up in the cloud.
On UnravelingTheSecrets.com.
On Unraveling the Secrets. And go to YouTube as well, because I think I have, under Mr. UFO's Secret Files, we now have about 55 audios and videos.
There's one of me snoring, too. It's perfect.
That's
one of her snoring, yes, very loudly.
In fact, we just added one of Joshua P. Warren in a haunted house. He did this 35 he did this 35 millimeter movie, documentary, and of course video sales are like they're non-existent anymore. So let's just share it with everybody. In fact, even my horror movies are up there under Mr. Creepo or Tim Beckley or something like that. You'll find the Skin-Eating Jungle Vampires and Blood-Sucking Vampire Freaks and Sandy Hook Lingerie Party Massacre. And this is Tim Beckley saying over and out, and look up and look down and look both ways.
Good night.
Just don't look sideways, because that can get confusing.